Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. And don't forget to go and spoil yourself. Get yourself a fabulous drink, because I've got an equally as fabulous story for you tonight. And if you're a new subscriber, welcome to the channel. I'm so delighted you've joined us, because we love our stories on this channel, and there's nothing that beats a good story. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, it's a spectacular morning. Even the cock announced its arrival with a loud cock-a-doodle-doo. But I was like Dracula, confined to the darkness of my cosy burrow, or in his case a coffin, until the light spoilt all the fun. I should have risen earlier, especially when the pugnacious unwelcome sunlight had audaciously trespassed into my bedroom, pushing abruptly through the crack in the long white curtains that I always failed to close correctly. It rudely interrupts the cool sanctuary of my darkened bedroom, breezing above the shining wooden floorboards, bouncing buoyantly over my bed covers, in speckles of radiant interfering sunlight that are not subdued or repressed in their vibrant tenacity, which would have aroused the less fatigued, but not me. I was too exhausted to actually care. I'd never been this tired before. Even getting out of bed just to shut the curtains to block out this rude, invasive intrusion is too much trouble for me, despite my blue eyes that are withering as they squint from its blinding effects. In mock retaliation against this meddling, impudent light, I bury my face in the pillow to block it all out. If I had my way, I would sleep for many days at a time, only daring to climb out of bed for brief refreshments. I have thought about this an awful lot, just living in bed for an entire week, having takeaways delivered to my bedroom, should an impertinent hunger invade my bouts of deep sleep, with its furious demands. Then I would order some of my absolute favourite foods, from pizza to Chinese takeaways. I would pig out, falling asleep from the physical exertion of my overindulgence. It's a very attractive idea, that one day I fully intend to orchestrate, burying myself amidst my bed covers, hibernating like a squirrel, a raccoon or a bear. You dream of scenarios like this when you're as frazzled as I am right now. In truth, I feel worn out, like a piece of old washing that's been through the spin dryer and washing cycle time and time again, and has been stretched and punnelled beyond recognition. Now I am faded, bedraggled, and completely exhausted. I realise that they're right, whoever they are, that moving can be one of the biggest stresses of your entire life. Certainly in line with divorce, or possibly even losing a loved one. That sounds dramatic, I know. In fact, I'd thought that was a preposterous suggestion, outrageously unreasonable. I mean, how hard could it be to relocate? I have a friend of mine who has lived in Singapore, Hong Kong, London, and various states all over America, and she makes moving look like a walk in the park. I think perhaps I was exorbitantly fooled by her nonchalant approach about moving, because it's nothing like she makes it out to be. Oh, it's no big deal, she had assured me with a bright sunny smile on her face. I've done it hundreds of times. I've moved from Singapore to America. That was the worst. But don't worry, it's pretty plain sailing. Are you kidding me? I had no idea what sea that she was sailing on when she moved. But for us, moving was anything but plain sailing or elementary, even though we were just moving to another state. Moving is one of the most stressful, debilitating, taxing, and nerve-wracking things I've ever done in my entire life. The hardest part of leaving was saying goodbye to my lifelong friends, most whom swore blind I wouldn't like the slow pace of life outside of Boston. I'd be back to my old roots, and all that I've ever known in a heartbeat. I was not sure they were right. Little did I realise that packing your whole life away in boxes, cleaning up the apartment you've been renting for many years, until it shines like a new pin, and relocating to another part of the world where you don't know a living soul, is definitely an arduous challenge that is not for the faint-hearted. My enchanting new lakefront house in the countryside, that I'd fallen in love with the moment I laid eyes on, was now liberally scattered with boxes in every single room, marked in black pen which room the box actually belonged to, like kitchen, dining room, and so forth. There were pictures and mirrors lined against the wall, still wrapped up in bubble wrap, and the idea of unpacking all this stuff was so intimidating, so daunting, so incredibly overwhelming. I had found it almost impossible to just drag myself out of bed every morning, and today was no exception. I continued to soak in this upheaval, the chaos of our tumultuous move, like a dog that's been chasing a rabbit for hours on end, and is so burnt out he can't move a muscle anymore. Yes, that's a good description. Burnt out. That's exactly how I feel. It was my fiancé's suggestion that we move to the country. He knew in the future we would be having a family of our own. He believed raising our children in the natural world was very significant. "You know," he says to me one day, when we're sharing a bottle of Pinot Noir together, and he becomes very reflective. Wine had always melted away Tom's reserved reticence, rather like butter on a piece of toast. "When I was 15 years old, I went to stay with a very good friend of mine, on his uncle's farm in Montana. That was the best time I've ever had in my young life. I learnt things about the natural world that I'd never appreciated before. I was astonished by the worms in the soil, the birds, the animals, the incredible miracles of nature. I was appalled by how disconnected I was to it all. That's what living in the city can do to you. An urban environment conflicts with nature. I don't want our kids to grow up not comprehending the earth. I want them to feel it between their fingers, so that it crumbles in their hands. Explore what's hidden under the rocks, to go fishing, to climb trees, to ride on remote country lanes in the wilderness on their bicycles. I think in discovering nature, you find yourself. That's what happened to me in Montana. When I returned to Boston after that break, I was a different creature altogether. A much better one. A much more compassionate human being. Let's just say that I'd lived in Boston all my life. The idea of moving to the countryside was less than agreeable to me. I was comfortable with what I knew. Boston was a fabulous place to live, a coastal university city with so much to offer. I had a warped, distorted, somewhat misaligned perception that living in the countryside would be tediously boring, dull, uninspiring. Granted, my fiancé Tom and I were living in a pedestrian, mediocre high-rise apartment block in Jamaica Plain that was considered a more affordable part of Boston. It was about 25 minutes away from downtown. I liked the student youthful vibe here, and I had accumulated so many friends over the years, so leaving was never on the cards for me, not even for a moment. My fiancé wanted to accept a job transfer to Grand Marias, Minnesota, which is located in Cook County and is known as Great Marsh in French, given to it by the French explorers that came to this part of the world and settled here. The town itself is situated on the northern shores of Lake Superior and is considered one of the coolest towns in small-town Minnesota, with quaint main streets, general stores, and fabulous ice cream parlours, the quintessential escape from city life. Let's just say I clandestinely had in mind to humour my fiancé Tom by just visiting the town, viewing various properties that were for sale around the northern shore of Lake Superior. I knew that putting my foot down would be unreasonable, as that would make me like a closed door, not open to change. I needed to humour my fiancé, go through the motions of at least visiting the place. I had in mind that I would ultimately persuade him that life near a small town, around a lake, was not for me. In truth, that was how I was expecting to react. But what I hadn't anticipated was that the prepossessing views of Lake Superior, glittering like an exquisite silvery jewel under the morning sun, the arresting countryside, the quaint, small, charming town, would quite literally hold me hostage to a reverent awe. I found my instinctive reservations about this part of the world beginning to dwindle away, like the white smoke from a chimney, until they dissipated completely. Let's just say this I had not expected to happen. And quite suddenly, the idea of moving to the northern shore of Lake Superior, a 24-hour car journey away from Boston, didn't seem like half such a bad idea, after all. I had engaged in tireless, futile arguments with my fiancé Tom about how I never wanted to leave Boston, how I couldn't, how it would be impossible to do. He had told me that I was a little like someone in a restaurant ordering the same food over and over again, tentatively reluctant to order something new in case it would not meet with my approval, too afraid of facing my own disappointment. Tom said I was prudently unadventurous, and he was the one that would push me to try something different on the menu. And more often than not, when I did do that, I was rather surprised that I actually enjoyed the food. It was true I was resolutely circumspect, conventional, cautiously set in my ways, with an erroneous, unwarranted acumen that had persuaded me that leaving behind everything I'd ever known to begin a brand new life would be the most nonsensical, idiotic, irrational, and brazenly injudicious thing that I'd ever done. Let's just say the day me and my fiancé Tom drove down the long asphalt driveway of this Lake Superior home, situated on the north shore of Lake Superior, I could actually feel my heart pounding in my chest, not from fear, but from a smouldering excitement that I didn't want to feel, and a reverential, wondrous awe that held me captive to its powerful, inspirational persuasions. You would have had a heart as hard as a rock, and eyes that were clearly dimming, not to be seduced by the beguiling views I was beholding. The house was surrounded by undulating green hilly terrain that was bespeckled with a plethora of tall towering trees, clustered together in congenial groups that seemed to smile at us as we made our approach, while the house overlooked the lake, with a long ribbon of sandy beach that graced its shores so elegantly. Suffice to say, we arrived at the house minutes before the estate agent. Not only was I impressed by the size of the house that seemed to squat happily on its sturdy foundations, as if it had always belonged here, as if even the earth had rooted her from a little seed, like one of the trees themselves. The house was seemingly so comfortable in its own skin, a delightful architect's creation, on 2 stories, with large glass windows, sliding doors, high ceilings, a wraparound porch that curled around the front of the home in a magnanimous warm hug. It would seem the house incorporated the use of stone and wood, natural materials complementary to the landscape, very befitting to the rich, vibrant fauna and flora. For a moment, me and my fiancé sit in the truck, staring at the house. Neither of us dare to say a word. We both seem to want to bask in the view, soak in the energy of this tranquil oasis, like breathing in a fabulously beautiful fragrance for the very first time, and becoming acquainted with its many subtle, elusive, delicate notes. In my heart there's an interior tug-of-war going on that my fiancé Tom knows absolutely nothing about, rather like 2 female wrestlers inside of me, fighting each other, both defiant about winning. In my case, the wrestler that doesn't want to make Lake Superior home, that has muscles and power, whom I'd put all my money on to win, is rapidly losing this battle against her nimble, slight opponent, whom didn't stand a chance in the beginning. But boy, how the tables have turned, and an unlikely winner is now raising the trump card. How I wanted to hate this place. I wanted to be unstirred, aloof, unmoved, like a tall, stubborn, bull-headed redwood tree, resolutely headstrong in its residential-rooted occupancy, stuck to its foundations with sturdy, robust, vigorous roots that run so deep it's impossible to dig it up, or to relocate it to another spot. Something is whispering into my heart. It's so beautiful, so beautiful, is it not? My eyes melt like rich, luxuriant chocolate. My mouth stretches out into a wide, broad grin, while my heartstrings are being forcefully tugged, as hard as a church bell, and my unshakable, pertinacious, intransigent convictions not to be tempted have blown away like a dandelion seed on the wind. It's no use. This place has already crept under my skin. My fiancé Tom is turning around to look at my expression, to observe my reaction to this idyllic lakefront home. I try to maintain that blank screen kind of look, that nonchalant indifference, as if I've been unmoved by this exquisite home. I don't want him to know that I'm completely enamoured, blown away by this dreamy, poetic oasis. Well, not yet, anyway. I don't want to see the self-satisfied, smug, I told you so look on his face. My fiancé is a handsome man. He's absolutely 100% my type in every single regard. As shallow as it sounds, it was his boyish good looks at a party at a friend's house that made me amble over towards him at the barbecue over a year ago, where he was turning over the meat for the guests. It was sausages, hot dogs, sticky spare ribs and chicken kebabs that were on offer that night, and the sizzling, aromatic, meaty, flavourful, spicy smells were absolutely delicious. I pretended I wanted to give him a helping hand to cook some of those burgers. He didn't need my help, but I pretended he did. I was much more interested in getting to know this unassuming, self-effacing man. So I stood determinedly around the smouldering woody flames of the grill, talking to him for ages. We connected. The rest is history. I'm glad he was so much more than his boyish looks, as in my opinion, personality, humour, integrity, charm are the quintessential ingredients for a successful relationship, as well as being the very best of friends. Without those essential, crucial ingredients, you're pretty much doomed, I think. An attractive box of chocolates is good to look at, but if the chocolates taste insipid, you certainly have a raw deal. I'd always been attracted to the politely reserved, introverted types that would never ever take the initiative to ask you out, due to their timorous reticence, the type that you needed to push to be persuaded to ask you out. I also loved men with boyish looks, and Tom was every bit a cute-looking boy, with a baby face, cute dimples on his cheeks, brown hazel eyes, and soft wavy brown hair. And let's just say I was smitten before he even asked me out. He presents a Matt Damon or a young Leonardo DiCaprio look, if you get my drift. So he says to me as we're sitting in the car together, staring at this gorgeous lakefront house, "Tamara, what do you think?" I think it's beautiful, I say. Rarely beautiful. Tom reaches out to grab my hand. He gives it a friendly squeeze. "You did not expect to like this place, did you? You were hoping you weren't going to like it. Like at the time at the Italian restaurant, you wanted pizza again. I asked you to try the gnocchi. You didn't want to try it, but you love it now." Your point is? My point is, Tamara, I can see the begrudging walls of Jericho are beginning to tumble down. You could possibly be persuaded to move here. Now, don't you dare get cocky with me. I haven't said that I'm persuaded, but let's just say I will concede that this place is beguilingly beautiful. But then again, so are many holiday destinations around the globe. But it doesn't mean that I want to just up and leave everything I know and move in. Tom is grinning from ear to ear. "Methinks the lady protests too much," he pipes. Suddenly we hear the very distinctive purring sound of a truck hastening its approach. Rubber tyres roll down the smooth sweep of asphalt, gliding seamlessly in a parking position about 10 feet away from us, where the truck grinds to a swift halt. I hear the engine switching off. "Ah, that'll be the estate agent," says Mark, climbing out of the truck. He rushes over to my door to open it for me. Something he's always done. He's the perfect gentleman like that. The estate agent is a man in his early 30s, with a brisk business-like manner and a large, warm smile. He shakes our hands warmly and leads us around the property. "It's a lovely home, designed by the original owner. He was an artist. Lots of artists in this part of the world," he says. "They come here to paint the glorious lake views, the awe-inspiring sunsets. It's dreamy out here. The perfect escape from city life. I understand the both of you are from Boston. Is that right?" "That would be right," says Mark. "Tired of the city?" asks the estate agent quizzically. "Well, I am," admits Tom. "I mean, I've lived in Boston all my life, and I really do love the natural world. I fancy living somewhere very, very beautiful, somewhere like this. But my fiancée Tamara needs to be tempted to change her mind. She's very set in her ways." "Well, to be fair,
It is a completely different way of life out here, admits the estate agent. Very different to Boston, I should imagine. Much slower than the city. But I've never known any city people ever regretting moving here. Something about this place, it steals your heart, gets under your skin.
So the previous owner designed this house himself, I ask. You say he wasn't even a proper architect. But it's so perfect. He's thought of absolutely everything. I love that this house has an attic, and it has a cellar. I love the incorporation of wood and stone, the avant-garde lighting, the cosy large fireplaces, the fabulous sliding doors, with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking such arresting views. Not to mention a kitchen that is so modern, so sophisticated. I would be quite happy to invite Gordon Ramsay around to cook dinner for me in this kitchen. It's perfect.
Well, if you do invite Gordon Ramsay around to your kitchen, I hope you'll be inviting me to dinner. He's rather a particularly good cook, I imagine. Anyway, when it comes to artists, they do know how to bring the natural contours of nature into the home. Hence the curve of the staircase there, the use of natural materials, the seamless flow of the rooms as they glide into each other so effortlessly.
After I'd been shown around the property, I found the Ice Queen in my heart melted away like the snow on a very hot day, so that there were no reservations left at all. I was completely won over by this place. I wanted this house with all my heart. I said to Tom, "You've got to put an offer in. We can't lose this place. We simply have to have it."
"That's a big turnaround for you. But isn't that a bit hasty?" he asks me. "We haven't seen any other homes yet. Don't you think we should look at alternative properties first for sale, before we just pounce on the first place we see? But I do admit this is a particularly lovely home."
"But I want this house," I say defiantly, realising that I'm sounding like a petulant spoilt brat that won't take no for an answer. But I don't care. I don't care how obnoxious or self-entitled I sound. I am consumed with an inexplicable, frenzied desire to own this property. Now leaving Boston to live out here has hit me with a tsunami of overwhelming desire that can't be subdued or discouraged. One thing about me, that although I'm very set in my ways, doggedly set in them sometimes, when I do change my mind, my decisions are ultimately always fixed, like a house is on sturdy foundations. Stubbornness is my middle name. I'm told that this is because of the bull-headed side of my personality that is typically found in the Taurus birth sign. "I don't want to look at any other houses," I explained to Tom. "I've made my mind up on this. Don't go playing games with the price. Remember how my mother did that with the house she lost. We can't lose this house. Go with the asking price, I insist." So let's just say 2 months later, we'd moved into our dream home. My husband had his new job in town. And right now I'm lying in my bed, almost refusing to get up. Who knew that a move could be this debilitating? My cell phone has annoyingly rung numerous times, like an obnoxious, irritating, demanding person that wants to get your attention and will stop at nothing to get it. I almost want to hit it over the head with my hairdryer until I've smashed it into smithereens. I've abandoned it, rather like a noxious bad smell. Frankly, I don't care if the whole of Boston is trying to get hold of me. I don't want to speak to anyone right now. I want to be left alone with my thoughts, alone with my fatigue, alone in my brand new environment and my new home, alone with these god-awful boxes that plague and untidily litter the rooms and passageways of my home, like an unwanted disease that I simply don't want to address. Procrastination and denial is just so much easier than dealing with the chaotic upheaval of all this stuff. I want to walk along the sweeping beach overlooking the lake outside. I want to drink in the delicious views, sip the fresh air, not deal with the laborious, daunting, intruding obstacles of this mayhem that are constantly poking me in the gut and reminding me that they need to be attended to and unpacked. I don't know how I managed to maneuver myself out of bed that morning, but somehow I do. At some point you've got to get out of bed. But if I had my way,
I would be marooned on this bed for 24 hours like an island in the Pacific, basking in the sunshine of my sleep. I quickly move over to the windows and pull the curtains, my eyes immediately drawn to the shimmering light of the new morning, all the new afternoon, shall I say, glittering across the lake, surrounded by its sweep of sandy beach, serenaded by the tall viridescent trees. I'm reminded of why I moved here in the first place. I knew in my heart it was the right decision to make. I throw on my dressing gown and make my way to the bathroom. A warm shower is going to ease away the muscular tension that has tightened every part of my body, so that even my legs are aching, and the area between my shoulder blades and around my neck feels incredibly stiff and unyielding. I throw my clothes in a messy puddle on the floor, and naked I step into the shower, closing the glass doors behind me, and allowing the invigorating, gushing warm water to trickle down my body. I gasp in appreciation as the warm water melts away the aches and pains, refreshes and invigorates my body, wipes away the sleepy, sluggish cobwebs that gathered around my eyes. I soak in the revelry of this moment, shampooing my hair with a coconut shampoo. The foaming water cascades down my body in a plethora of white bubbles. I close my eyes tightly to avoid any stinging soap creeping in between my lids. Suddenly I hear a loud bang, an intrusive bang. My eyes open wide very suddenly, and that is when I see it. Through the dark mist of the shower door that has steamed over, a tenebrous silhouette is actually staring at me, but then quickly moves away and vanishes. What the hell? I wipe the glass screen with my hand to look through it more clearly, but there is nothing there. What was that? My senses are stirred with a tumultuous horror. I open the shower door as fast as a bullet, my head peering out. No one is there. Did I imagine that? I was sure I saw a dark silhouette. I wrap a towel around my head in a turban, throwing on my toweling robe, and I begin to race around the house like a frenzied steam train, but no one is there. The house is steeped in a congenial silence. I was sure, absolutely sure I'd seen someone standing there in the bathroom, looking directly at me through the misty screen door. I didn't imagine that. I'm sure I didn't. I even call out, "Hello? Hello? Is anyone there?" But I'm met with the echo of my own words. That is weird, I think. I'm sure I saw something. Sometimes when you think you saw something enter your visual space, so fleetingly, you second-guess yourself, doubt that you actually saw anything at all. I was probably tired, I tell myself. It was just a trick of the light. Perhaps it was just a dark shadow. I realise I'm starvingly hungry, so I pad into the kitchen. The kitchen clock is the one thing hanging on the wall, left there graciously by the previous owner. I realise it's lunchtime. No wonder I'm starving. I eagerly open the refrigerator to retrieve the leftover takeaways from the previous night. We ordered extra so that I had something to eat at lunchtime without the need to go shopping, as Tom fully appreciates how exhausted I am. But when I pull out the Chinese square cartons, I'm astonished that the food has all been eaten, and all that remains in the fridge is a bunch of empty boxes, which is incredulous. Now this really does surprise me. Number one, Tom would never leave empty boxes of Chinese food in the refrigerator, as we always throw out finished food as a matter of routine. And two, he would never have eaten Chinese food in the morning before he left for his brand new job. More to the point, he'd said he'd leave it for me to enjoy, because he knew that there was scant food in the house anyway. I feel so fatigued of late, and he knew shopping wasn't on the agenda. This is incongruous behaviour for Tom. He's a very thoughtful, kind person, but maybe he woke up with a raging appetite, an attack of the munchies. Granted, I do feel a bit disgruntled, rather cheated. I'd been looking forward to eating those leftovers. I managed to find some cornflakes and milk. That'll have to do. Which I eat hungrily, and I make myself a large cup of coffee to energise me. Caffeine always helps me feel as if I can function again. I then meander my way around a plethora of boxes that are like rocks scattered across the seashore. I quickly pull on some jeans and a sweatshirt from one of my suitcases, and then I saunter happily out of the house. It is a breathtakingly beautiful day. I'm going to thoroughly enjoy a couple of hours basking in the spring sunshine. As I amble over to the shore of Lake Superior, I just stare out at the twinkling depths. It's one of the clearest lakes I've ever seen. I gather for this reason it's known as the most oligotrophic lake in the world, which is why you can see to about 27 feet below. It's a great lake for swimming, I'm told, on a hot day, something I fully intend to do, but not now. I've seen some fish swimming around in the water. They look like trout. It's amazing how the water is frothing in white waves as it meets the sandy shoreline, so reminiscent of the ocean waves. The whole beach is freckled by large and small rocks. I choose to sit close to the edge on a rock as I stare out vacantly at the water, my head peering out at the blue sky, as I watch a couple of American kestrels circling the skies, hovering over the lake. I watch them for ages and ages through my binoculars and marvel at this magnificent sighting. I've always enjoyed observing birds. Out here I should be in my element, I suppose. I don't think I've ever felt as peaceful as I do now, in my entire life. Finally the kestrels fly away. I amuse myself by throwing rocks into the water. They skim above the surface and nosedive elegantly to the depths. I suddenly get the overwhelming sense that I'm being watched. It sends an uncomfortable chill running down my spine. I turn around to observe the landscape that fringes the lake, which in my case appears to be a combination of mountain ashes, white spruces, and paper birches, but I see no sign of anything staring back at me. But the only sound I hear is the engaging, pretty trills of the joyful bird song. Am I going completely mad, I wonder? Maybe I'm losing it due to my exhaustion. First I thought I saw a dark silhouette in my bathroom. Now I think someone is watching me, here by the lake. But there is no one here. Let's just say, slowly and surely, I begin to settle into my new home. But the fixation I had with my cell phone has been eclipsed by an extreme disinterest in the gadget that I'm now beginning to resent, like an old affair that I now want to end. In Boston, I was so frustrated when I had to recharge the battery from this thing and be separated from it for a while. But now I almost want nothing to do with the tiresome gadget, except at night when I'm watching YouTube videos and listening to stories. I love listening to stories. Everyone is complaining that I'm impossible to get hold of these days, and that my phone is annoyingly switched off all the time. I don't know what it is, but the countryside has made me meditational, much more connected to nature, and less interested in the beguiling allure of technology. How can I explain this to my friends, who are so used to me answering my cell phone astutely? On the first ring, I have to say. Something within me has shifted. I'm meditating a lot, doing yoga, taking long reflective walks that engage my senses. But I've also noticed strange incongruous things happening around my home, of which I cannot fathom nor explain. For one, the disappearing of the food. My fiancé insists he's not pilfering the food in our fridge, but it seems to vanish, unless of course I'm losing my mind, and am beginning to wonder about that. Tom suggested that maybe I'm sleepwalking, skulking into the kitchen in the middle of the night, eating copious amounts of food unaware, that I can't even remember eating. If that were indeed the case, surely I'd have put on a lot of weight. But I resign myself to the fact that maybe this is happening, or one of us is lying to the other about how much we're actually consuming. I once heard that many people are in denial about the calories they're eating, and the amount they really ingest far outweighs their own perception. I've always been slim, but maybe that is happening to me. Another thing that is also odd is I find things moved around the house, placed in odd places, like my car keys and my purse now hanging on the hook in the entrance hall. I'd never in a million years put them up there. So yes, bizarre things are happening, and I found a lot of my underwear from the laundry basket appears to have disappeared. What I haven't told Tom about is that I always have this feeling that I'm being watched, especially when I'm alone in the bedroom, or in the bathroom for that matter, or when I'm walking around Lake Superior itself. But I guess I'm just imagining all this. One night I woke up in the middle of the night with my husband fast asleep beside me. I opened my eyes to see a dark silhouette standing there in the doorway of my bedroom. I closed my eyes quickly, only to open them again, and the figure was gone. It sent chills down my spine. I thought I'd seen a ghost. "Tom, wake up! Tom, wake up!" I said, poking him in the back. "There's someone in the house. I saw a figure standing in the doorway. It was looking at me." Tom bounced out of the bed speedily. "You stay there," he said. "I'll check the house." But he returned back to bed, assuring me that nothing was there. "What did you see?" he asks me. "He was a middle-aged man, very skinny," I said, "dressed in bedraggled clothes." "Oh, my word, Tom, you don't suppose we've got a ghost here?" I asked. "Ghost, Tamara?" he had laughed. "Don't be ridiculous. Of course we don't have a ghost here. There are no such thing as ghosts. And even if there are none in this property. This house is far too young to have a ghost." "Well, then how do you explain what I saw? There was a human silhouette standing in the doorway." "You probably dreamt it," says Tom. "You woke up in the night having dreamt about a strange figure in the doorway. It was real to you. You believed what you saw was a ghost. That can happen. It's happened to me. It's called having a lucid dream." I was beginning to think Tom was right. I must have been dreaming it all. Then one day after shopping in town for provisions, I return home exhausted from the shop, collapsing on my bed. And that is when, lying flat on my bed, my eyes just gaze up at the ceiling for some reason. I'm filled with the overwhelming sense that I'm being watched. It's a feeling that I've experienced in my home from the moment I moved in here. I had expressed my misgivings to my sagacious friends back home in Boston, who suggested the house might well be haunted. I informed them that no one had died in the house. It had been built and designed by the former owner. But my friend Maddie did not think that mattered at all. She suggested that the land itself might be haunted. It was for this reason I was considering inviting a paranormal investigator to my home, as things were always being moved, and the feeling of being watched perforated my life daily. Of course, my fiancé Tom thought it was all in my imagination, as he had not experienced any of those impressions in our home himself. "Maybe with all the time you have on your hands these days, you're seeing things that aren't actually there," he told me. Now as I lie back on my bed, studying the ceiling for no reason at all, a freezing chill teases my spine. The hairs on my neck stand on edge. My heart begins to pound violently in my chest. I see an eye staring down at me from the ceiling through a hole that I'd never noticed before. I'm in no doubt about what I've seen. I almost jump out of my skin when a horrifying revelation hits me like a brick across the head. There's someone in my attic. They're looking down on me right now. My skin is crawling, as if 1,000 spiders are running down my back. I want to scream, run, get the hell out of my house as fast as I can. But I restrain my gripping fear, knowing that it could bring with it grave consequences if this individual in the attic realizes that I know he's there. So empowered by my intuition, I act nonchalant. I close my eyes again. I pretend I haven't seen anything at all, but I know what I saw. Bloody hell, there's someone in my house, and worse still, they're spying on me. No wonder I've always felt as if I'm being watched. It hasn't been in my head at all, nor has it been a figment of my imagination, nor am I losing my mind. It explains why food has been mysteriously disappearing from our refrigerator, and that things have been moved around the house. My house is not haunted. The figure I saw when I was showering, and the figure that crept into my bedroom one night, who was staring at me, was no ghost. He was real. I do not want the stranger hiding out in my attic to know I'm onto him, and fully aware of his presence. I need to call the police without the stranger being aware of my plan. I climb off the bed, trundling down the sweeping staircase. I know if I run fast, that might look suspicious. Finally, I reach the kitchen, exiting through the back door, grabbing a sharp knife from the kitchen block for protection, along with my cell phone. There is no way in hell I want the stranger to see me phoning the police. I'm sure he didn't know that I observed his eye in the attic, but I can't be sure about that. My whole body is trembling. The cell phone in my hands is almost slipping because I'm sweating so much. My body is shaking. My knees almost buckle beneath me. In a trice, before I manage to dial the emergency phone number, a shadowy figure dashes hastily towards me, plunging right into me like a car driving into a telegraph pole, throwing me off my feet so I lose my balance and fall back onto the driveway. He grabs the cell phone from my hands and runs away like a jackhare. He's hightailing it from my property. I am completely gobsmacked that for a moment I remain on the ground, my mouth hanging open like a Venus flytrap. Did that just happen? The man obviously knew I had seen his eyes staring at me from the attic. I must have given myself away. I must have somehow reacted. I managed to pull myself off the ground and give chase of the man. I can see he's possibly in his 40s, but he's got a good stride on him. But for some reason I unhesitantly follow him. The knife drops precariously on the ground, but I leave it lying there. I don't need it now. I continue running after the stranger, who seems harmless enough. He's possibly more afraid of me than I am of him. I'm absolutely enraged that he's been squatting in my attic. How dare he spy on me like that? Is he some kind of deranged pervert that belongs in a psychiatric hospital, I wonder? I've never been an assertive person, and courage is not exactly my middle name. But I run after him as fast as I possibly can. "Oi there!" I cry out of him. "Don't you dare run away! Give me back my cell phone now! Who the hell are you? What are you doing in my attic?" I'm wearing sneakers. He's wearing walking boots. He darts over the billowing terrain with a relative ease, rather like a mountain goat, while I'm a lot less nimble on my feet and lose my footing on 2 occasions over some gnarled roots that angrily jut out of the ground. I keep chasing this intrusive stranger. I do not know how long I run for in the forest, but I begin to slow down my pace when I realise that the man has long gone. I know I'm defeated. I didn't even get a good look at him. I'd never be able to describe him to the police, which is a discomposing thought that bothers me greatly. My breathing is heavy. The sweat is now pouring down my face. I wipe it away with my sleeve. I sit down on the forest floor for a moment, resting my body against a tree trunk. I'm still breathing fast. I feel as if I've run a marathon. I cradle my head in my knees as I try to assimilate everything that has just transpired, to make sense of it all. I know that I have no means of communication now, for the stranger in my attic stole my cell phone. He was trying to stop me from calling the police. That's what I imagine it was. I glance around at my bearings. I've never been so deep in the woods before, but it's so pretty, especially this late in the afternoon, when the gossamer light has softened and dances through the canopy, twinkling over the vegetation in a shimmering luminescence. That is when I see a dark shadow. Oh my God, it's the man! He's back, I think. I rise quickly to my feet, grab the nearest stick I find on the ground, and shout out, "Oi, I've seen you! Come out now! You can't keep hiding like this!" I quickly move towards the tree, where I'd seen the strange movement, and I find myself standing 2 feet away from what I only can describe as a female Bigfoot. You've got to be kidding me. Could this day get any weirder? The next thing I'm going to see is fairies flying from tree to tree. I begin to rub my eyes. I know this creature can't be real, but she is. I'm bewildered. She doesn't disappear from my sight, but stands there watching me through congenial, curious brown eyes that sparkle with a teasing amusement. It's almost as if she's saying, "Yes, I'm real. Get over it." She's such an intimidating, daunting creature, as her Herculean size is overwhelming. But I feel no fear. Her humanness means I feel affiliated with her. I think she's about 8 foot tall, 700 pounds, with long flowing dark hair, the colour of a black bear. It fringes her body in silken waves. She has large breasts and a very intelligent human-looking face. To my astonishment, I discover in her hands she's actually holding my cell phone. Where did she get that from? I'm amazed. I imagine the strange man I'd been chasing must have dropped it on the chase. She must have recovered it. She seems delighted with her new find. I point to the phone, which she seems reluctant to give me. She seems to like it, because it has a very attractive glittering bling holder. She strokes it with her fingers, rubbing her fingers across the glitzy sparkle that has clearly transfixed her. Her eyes just show this appreciation. I understand that she loves the casement of my cell phone. "It's mine," I tell her, using my body language to try and explain my dilemma. "Do you mind giving it back to me?" I say, opening my hands. I point to the case and to myself, and she seems to understand. She looks so disappointed, as if she can't bear the idea of parting with her find. But despite her incertitude and her unwilling reservations, she still hands my cell phone back to me, with a vacillating, hesitant reluctance. I remove the cell phone from the bling casing and hand the casing back to her. She is delighted. It was the bling holder that had interested her in the first place, not my cell phone. I realise she must love fulgurating things that sparkle. And then I remember I'm wearing a little chain with an aquamarine stone, given to me by my friend from Boston as a leaving gift. I pull it off my neck, handing it to the Bigfoot. She examines the stone with eyes that are so animated, so enthused, so delighted. And when she realises that I'm giving her the stone, she knows she's got a good deal going here. She lets out a couple of excited whoops and then glides away and is gone. But judging by her bouncing movements and her enthusiastic response, she is one happy Bigfoot. The moment I return home, I call the police. A couple of officers arrive at the house. They climb up the ladder of my attic. To my amazement, we discover a sleeping bag, a pillow strewn across the attic floor. I observe food containers that were clearly pilferage from our kitchen. That explains all the missing food. A drawing book of pictures of me taken in a state of undress. So whoever this man was, the pictures were very good. He was clearly an artist. And several items of lingerie that were missing from the laundry basket that I had worn were lying amidst the bed sheets, which was rather unsettling and discomposing, I have to say. The police officer looks at me and says, "It seems your squatter enjoys indulging in voyeurism. Had a fixation on you," he says, running his gaze swiftly through the book of pictures done in charcoal crayon. "They're good," he says. "He's clearly an artist." "That's no consolation, officer," I explain. "He's been living in my attic, spying on me. The question is, who is he?" "I was hoping you might be able to tell us more about that," says the officer. "Did you get a good look at him? Can you describe him to us?" "He was middle-aged, mousy brown hair, about 5'11", bedraggled-looking clothes." "Well, you could be describing hundreds of men," says the officer, scowling. "Did you get a look at his face?" "No, I didn't. The officer has a beer can that he found in the attic, which he will take for DNA analysis to see if they get a hit. But I regret to say that the mysterious case of the strange man who was squatting in my roof was never ever solved. And to this day, me and my husband do not know who on earth he was, and are none the wiser about this enigmatic mystery. The only good part of the experience was meeting the female Bigfoot, who left me a bunch of eagle's feathers outside my front door the following morning, that I still have today. I've not seen her since, but I guess these creatures move around. But here is hoping, as I would love to see her again. I have no intention of moving back to Boston. Tom and I are now happily married. I've made new friends in this part of the world, and I no longer feel as if I'm being watched all the time, which is a huge relief. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.